How to spot a narcissist on the first date. Oh my God.
The first date is going to be a little bit more difficult to differentiate between a bang on, like, wow, this is going to be big love date or a narcissistic date.
These can be lawyers, doctors, business people.
Doctors, lawyers, etc. Those are probably most likely the grandiose type narcissist who is a little bit more obvious, right? And they achieve their success through some of these narcissistic traits, which are also very important if you want to succeed in life. It's not like all narcissistic traits are bad.
The narcissist has manipulated and controlled this individual so much that it's almost like a trauma bonding.
I think it is the strongest addiction there is, stronger than heroin, if you ask me, because this person can give you your biggest high in the whole entire world. When things are good with the narcissist, there is nothing better. That person can also give you the worst low. This is why, you have to be so careful. This is just as dangerous.
There are certain things, techniques that you can implement to ending and stepping away from a narcissist.
Get yourself some allies, because you cannot do this alone. When you choose someone that you confide in, make sure 100% that this is a person who will.
Post-traumatic stress from narcissistic abuse is real, yeah?
There is no happy end with a narcissist. And this is my very strong personal and professional opinion. And people can call me out on this, but I've just never seen it.
Where shall we start, Alina? How did you find yourself sort of moving into this specialist area of narcissistic abuse therapy?
Actually, that's a good question. So my main topic of focus in my practice is actually couples therapy, and I do a lot of that. And when I have diplomats with their partners, or generally Austrians with their partners come in, and there's a trend that one partner's feeling, not happy in the relationship, and the other partner's like kind of okay. So this was the first kind of red flag where I was like, okay, this is a little bit weird, where both people are not on the same page. And through that, I just started picking up on things where I felt like the energy's off, and I felt like someone was in power but didn't show that in therapy. So those are kind of the first little things that I noticed. And then the way that this happened online for all the social media is that I just posted my first post on how to spot a narcissist on the first date. So maybe we can dive in with people they target, or what kind of people
Now, there's a hot one, right? And I'm just going to repeat what Alina said there. How to spot a narcissist on the first date. Oh my God. Alina, I've got friends and people, and I know we've all got stories where, people come to me and they say, I've started seeing, like, it might be a female, but I started seeing this guy, and I don't know, I'm not sure. And it might be one of my male friends, and they may say, I started seeing this lady, and she's a bit controlling. She's a bit manipulative. And I don't. Do you think I'm reading into it too badly? Or so let's start there. Is there a way that we can spot a narcissist? Do they have particular traits?
Yeah, for sure. So the first date is going to be a little bit more difficult to differentiate between a bang on, like, wow, this is going to be big love date, or a narcissistic date, because they can feel the same. But what they definitely do more than other people is they charm you with usually their looks and their personality. First of all, they get you in because they are usually people who can control a table, who can tell entertaining stories, who can make you laugh, who can make you wonder, like, wow, they're so gorgeous, they look good, and they have all that. But then they start doing things that you usually don't have happen on the first date, which is maybe talk to you about an upcoming trip that they want you to go with them, or talk to you about how beautiful you are. You're so gorgeous, Ian. Oh my God, your nose and your hair and the way you touch it, and it's just really, and and it's just like, we call it love bombing, but it's just this one compliment after the other that's a little bit much. But on the first date can be like, oh, you can feel very touched and very intimidated and just feel really good by it. But just be careful, because it's a red flag. Those kinds of things. So it's just when it's basically what you want in a detail, but too much of it
Yeah, I hear you. So this happened to one of my previous guests, and you may have listeners may have watched this on Netflix. Tinder Swindler with Cecilie Fjellhoy, the perpetrator of the horrible things that he did to her, including ripping her off to the tune of $230,000 in total. He was charm offensive. He was charm offensive. Very, very subtle, very, very early on. It was sort of, oh, you're so beautiful. You're this. Let me take you for dinner, fancy restaurants. And it was, let me send a car around to pick you up. Yeah, you're the love of my life. You're the only person in my life. As it actually transpires, he had a lot of people in his life, and he was a con man, complete con man. But that's But Alina, they're not always obvious, are they? They can be covert narcissists as well, that
Yeah, they
may
can be
show
covert, which is
may show themselves over a period of time, maybe.
yeah, they can be covert, which is much more subtle. They have the same traits, but they don't show it as much. So they're not aggressive, they're passive aggressive. They are hypersensitive. They show you like they're shy, they seem shy and coming on very softly, but really they resent you. There's things like that. So covert narcissism sometimes, you're smiling going, yep, yep. Can be even more scary than the grandiose, if I can say it like that. I don't know if I should, because it's not as obvious, right?
Yeah. This is where the landscape gets really interesting, because you speak a lot online about identifying these traits and these different styles. Because when you and I agreed to come into the studio together, I started to do some dives into how many different types of narcissists are there, and I think I read there is 12, but that might be just over analyzed. But you've definitely got different types, and this is where it gets a little bit sort of difficult to navigate, because you may be thinking, no, this person, no, definitely not, because they're very gentle, but then the traits creep in, don't they? They creep in over time, don't they? These little bits of gaslighting, stonewalling, unresponsive, manipulative, bring you in, make you feel good, then shut you down, then bring you in, make you feel good, shut you down. There's so many different nuances, and I think the other thing to bring up straight away early on, Alina, is that some of the listeners may be having an impression in their mind of the type of person this is. You mentioned good looking, charming, and then we mentioned the sort of more subtle, the covert, who may also
Yeah.
they may also be good looking, charming, all of those things, but in a very soft and gentle way. And also the stereotypical impression that some listeners may be having in their mind. Now, let me stop you straight away, because these can be lawyers, they can be doctors, they can be business people, they can be high society, they can be high society. Status may perceive them as high society. Is that a fair observation as well? They're not the striking.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would say that, like, the ones you were mentioning, like doctors, lawyers, etc., those are probably most likely the grandiose type narcissist, who is a little bit more obvious, right? And they achieve their success through some of these narcissistic traits, which are also very important if you want to succeed in life. It's not like all narcissistic traits are bad, right? You and I have them as well. They're important to have, but it's when you go down, it's a line and it's a spectrum, and if you are too much on the other side of the spectrum, then you have narcissistic personality disorder. And there's the grandiose narcissist. There's also what you mentioned, the vulnerable one, which seems to be shy and introverted and soft and subtle. They not always are. They just come at you from behind, I would say, or from the side. You don't notice them as much. And then there's the extreme obvious, like malignant type of narcissist, right? I mean, those are just absolute antisocial behavior or massive aggression, and they're just very much in your face. I would say that those three, I don't know about the 12. I'm sure there are 12. I've never even checked. But those are like the three groups I would put them. Let's not go to 12, because then it's going to be really scary. What I think differentiates them is, like, they have People are always like, oh, don't they go for someone who is really weak? And if you actually Google what type of person does a narcissist go for, it will tell you, oh, they're going for kind, low self-esteem people who like need to, like, that kind of stuff, which I really like. That is not true at all. I mean, I think that they search for, I mean, there's two levels of what they go for, but one is they want you to look good on them always.
Right.
So they
Right.
want people to lift them, to elevate them, to make them worth more, right? So they're going to pick people who
Wow.
are strong or beautiful or who are accomplished, and because it makes them look good. You know what I mean? I think that is their most important thing. Like, how do I upgrade myself? And that's the person they're going to go for.
Wow.
And yes, they're going to,
Wow. So
sorry,
it
I'm
might be
like,
somebody. It might be no, 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 no. So it might be somebody, for example, that they want somebody good looking on their on their arm, the eye candy, because that elevates them. Because then people are turning around and going, "Oh wow, who's the good looking guy? Who's the good looking girl with them?" So I get you. I see that. So not always the obvious thing that we may think they're looking for, whilst they are looking for vulnerability, because this is how the narcissist works, right? They're looking for chinks, they're looking for the weaknesses. So is there something that typically causes a person to become narcissistic, or are they always a narcissist?
no, I mean, we say that it's based on attachment theory. So if you grew up, there's two ways. There's being too spoiled, too being treated, the classic is the little prince, like, oh my gosh, you're so amazing, you're doing everything so great, everything's so amazing about you, you're wonderful, da da da, and look at what you're accomplishing here and there, like all these extreme compliments and extreme helicoptering, where the child doesn't feel like they are worth as much as the parents make them feel. So there's a discrepancy, and the cognitive
Right.
dissonance makes them narcissistic. Or the more
Mm.
obvious, and it's also probably the more prevalent, where there's massive neglect. So this child has a hole of self-worth. There's no self-worth, and that's why they're trying to fill it, and that's why they need narcissistic supply. But basically, it just stems out of a bad attachment style, because their primary caregiver did not give them what they needed as a child. That's the
Wow.
explanation for that
Wow.
lack. Yeah.
Mm. Could there be an element of entitlement as well in certain aspects? You mentioned there that that there could be that what if somebody's had an entitled upbringing, so therefore they see themselves as grandiose to everybody else. Is that a possibility too?
That's what we think, but that's how they act, and that's what they do, and that's what they portray with their actions. But very deep down inside, they have a lack. There's like a black hole. They don't have self-worth. So they are entitled, and they pretend, or they think that they're entitled in order to fill that black hole. They would never admit that, but that is the origin of the problem. And in order to cut that, like,
Wow.
some narcissists cover it up better than others, but it keeps
Yeah.
coming through. It's like, when they're, I don't know, anxious, preoccupied, and they have this like high level of seeking validation and seeking attention, and they need it, and they're clingy, and they're, demanding. And then if you don't do it, they are angry, and they resent you, and they hate you, so there's this, like, you
Sure.
can
Sure.
notice when you're
Sure.
not giving what
Sure.
you need so badly, they flip on you.
So let's talk about things like then. What are their typical traits? And I know that's a really expansive question for you, Alina. And if that's if you can just summarize that, there must be something that a narcissist typically shows. Earlier on we spoke about we're gonna have a question at the end of this, which you're going to help us really really like with a magical answer to a question. Hopefully it's a magical answer anyway. But is there some traits that we can start to see if we're doubtful, if we're like, could this be a narcissistic person? Could you help us with that?
Okay, so you've got, obviously, the first and biggest one, I think, is the lack of empathy. So they are really good at faking that empathy and giving you the feeling that they have it. But I've actually have a couple videos on this. Like, if you really tone down and watch their body language when they say things like, oh, I'm sorry, or you will see that it doesn't match, or when they move on really quickly after you told them a very touching story, they're like, oh yeah, that's so sad,
Yes.
by the way, and they
Yeah.
start, things like that. So they give that away. So it's a lack of empathy, which is the biggest problem. Also, because when they say sorry, they're not sorry because they feel it like a healthy human being. They're sorry because it sort of interrupted their narcissistic supply. So they need to kind of fix it to get it again. Okay. So there's a different agenda. So there's a lack of remorse and empathy, which is psychopathic as well, by the way. So that's something that
Wow.
differentiates a healthy human being, a sick one. There's obviously those grandiose fantasies of like exaggerated achievements or exaggerated way of living a perfect love relationship, which they're going to put on you. And if you don't achieve it, it's your fault that the relationship is not working,
Oh,
that kind of
wow.
thing. So there's this like, it has to be perfect and grandiose and superior and, that kind of thing. What else do I have? Because they don't have empathy, they're like super exploitive in their relationships. So they just use you. They take advantage of others. You're not something that's dear to their heart. You're something that's dear to their heart because you're bringing them their supply. So it all just boils down to that. And they need this excessive admiration and they, like all of these things. So basically it always boils down to being really empty inside and using you as a supply to fill that hole. If someone else has something they
Mm,
want, they're also extremely envious or jealous of others and they think they're
mm.
special. So they always need special treatment. So this kind of, those things.
It's incredible, isn't it? That really the facts of the matter, and I have friends, and I know you and I have spoke about some examples in your upcoming book and stuff where there are that's a very strong one that you've just said there. Where it's this. Well, actually, you're not the ideal partner, but if I just show you this, they wouldn't actually say that quite so boldly because that's going to bring you down. But it's like nudging away at you to improve yourself, to be a better version in the relationship. But it's never them. It's never them, and if you point the finger back and say, well, hang on a second, what about your behaviors? And, then this expression that is, hopefully everybody knows what we mean by this stonewalling, this, gaslighting, how dare you even question me for a second? I'm perfect.
Oh, yeah.
And again, you may never hear that iteration of those exact words, but that's the undertoned implied mannerism of what's coming back at you, which makes you feel bad, which undermines you as a person, which, if you are an empath, it hurts. It hurts you, not just, in your mind, but in your soul. It hurts you and you start to retreat and become a different person. And this is where the victim of narcissistic abuse is really, really sad, isn't it, Alina?
Yes, 100%. And what I want to add to that is I just also did a video on this because it just hit me. They wrap compliments, so to speak, compliments in something so negative, because I had a lot of actually on TikTok, people ask me like, why do I always, they have this way of like, they say nice things, but I feel bad. And then I kind of went into that and looked at it, and it's just like, they will tell you like, oh, Ian, my last relationship, it was so horrible. Like we were always fighting. I'm just so happy that you never cause a scene. You never fight with me. So things like that. So it seems like, first off, you were like, oh, that's so sweet. She's telling me like, oh, I'm not complicated and I'm easygoing, blah, blah, blah. But she's also telling you, if you ever cause a fight, you're going to be the problem the ex-boyfriend was. Do you know what I mean? So it's like this like
Sure.
pretending to say something
Yeah.
nice, but it's a threat wrapped in that compliment.
Yeah.
And so that
Oh my
makes you
God.
act different. And it's like, if they do this every day, which they do, to keep you where they want you, to keep you from doing things they don't want you doing, by comparing, contrasting
Mm.
with horrible psycho bipolar ex-girlfriends or boyfriends. And that's a classic,
Sure.
So
Sure.
they add
Yeah.
that as well. And that's also, ugh, it's just Gross.
It makes you crawl, right? It makes you go. We both shuddered then. For those people watching, listening to this just through audio, both Alina and I just shuddered. It was like, ooh, it sent a shiver down our spine. Alina, here's one for you. Being a therapist, is it difficult to identify a narcissist that comes into your maybe couples therapy or even as an individual? Are they so clever that they can mask who they really are? So they show the behavior elsewhere, but and if this is not this is sort of too expansive a question, we can move on. But is it difficult for is it difficult for a therapist to say, do you know what, I'm talking to a narcissist right now in front of me in therapy?
So, but maybe I get your question, and yeah, 1 second, I'll answer like what I feel. But I think maybe because I am now in a biased situation, because like my face and narcissism is like people identify me with that, right? So I think that now what's happening is people come to me and they're like, Alina, I'm a narcissist. I want to look at this, or I want to check it out. I know I'm a narcissist.
Right.
Some actually
Right.
wanting help, which is very rare, and some just wanting to show off with that fact that they're narcissistic. And what are you going to do about it? That kind of thing. So some of them tell me, so I don't have to guess, which is great. And then some of them are sort of introduced by their spouse. So it's going to be like, I'm here because my husband is a narcissist, and the husband's sitting running. So those are the giveaways. So there's a little bit of that.
Right. Okay.
If you ask me if I can identify them, I would say most of the time my radar does go off, but I am not safe from falling in private life, whether that's friends or that's romantic partners. There's, I've been
Okay.
through it. I've been
Okay.
there, and that's, I think, part
Yeah.
of the reason
Yeah.
I understand so well.
Yeah.
Us too.
Yeah. Yeah. And that just shows, doesn't it, listeners, that here's Dr. Alina Kastner, regarded as an expert in this area. And still, the narcissist can be so bloody clever that they can pull the wool over her eyes. And this brings me to a really interesting question, actually, which is, how do we manage a narcissist? So it might be, let's remove the romantic side of things for a second. But even in that context, if you can help us, but what if we've got a narcissist in our family, for example, that we're not just going to cut off because they may be a close family, they may even be our parents, for heaven's sake. So how can we effectively? Is there little things that we can do, Alina, to protect ourselves from being manipulated, hurt, all of the things that, and somebody once said to me, a narcissist is like a vampire. What they actually do is that to you, the victim, the person that they are going to get their teeth into, hence the vampire thing, they will get on your bloodline, metaphorically speaking. Imagine the vampire, and they're going to suck everything out of you. And they're going to suck everything out of you.
Yeah.
And when they aren't going to care that you drop on the floor in front of them. They're actually going to look at you with no empathy or no sort of emotional attachment whatsoever, and they're going to step over you and move on to their next victim. So that was something which was described to me, and that's
no, sorry, I'm like with the video we're interrupting, it doesn't work. I said 100%, like you're just exhausted, depleted, questioning your own self-worth, looking at them, begging them to see you and see your pain, and they will, like you said, walk right over that. Because why, Ian? Because you're no longer of use, because now you're empty, so you cannot supply them. So they need their next supply, which often they shove in your face how happy they are with their next supply. And once you've recuperated, once you kind of did the work and you got out of your black hole, if you didn't hurt yourself or do something, God forbid, which also happens, I have situations where people kill themselves because of their narcissistic partner. This is not a joke, it's very serious. And if you manage to survive, and that's why I call everyone a survivor that goes through this, and get yourself back up, it so often happens that they come back and hoover back at you because now you're interesting again, right? So then they want to suck you dry one more time.
Yeah, yeah, and let's come back to that piece, because I want to revisit that. But what about this managing if they're like our family, or is there anything that we can do, Alina, to protect or mitigate the damage?
Yeah, I think mitigate is a good word, because you can minimize, but you cannot keep from. I think it's impossible if you are healthy, and if you have empathy, and if you love this person, and if it's your parents, your siblings, your aunts, uncles, grandparents, whatever it is that's in your family, or your boss, which also happens a lot, a little bit different, because
Mm,
theoretically you can change job, but not always. Um, and I think the biggest lesson for, let's use parents, because just like an obvious topic,
sure.
they to try to minimize the time you spend with them to something like, okay, I'm only gonna go do brunch, I'm only gonna go do dinner, I'm only gonna go do this family event. I'm not gonna see them all the time. Let mom call me every day. I'm not gonna talk to her about my private life. So like, this is the hard work of putting up boundaries that you can put up without getting caught, that they know, like that kind of thing. Or let them know and be obvious about it and be like, look, I'm going to cut you down to this. I don't want contact here. I don't want you to call me here. I don't want to talk about my relationship with you. That's a strong one. I don't want to talk about my vulnerabilities with you right now. So like, putting up boundaries to have them know less about your life, everyday life, where they can sort of go into or put their teeth into, like you said, and put their poison in, right? So that's one, because a lot of times narcissistic parents, it's always about them. So if you have problems in your relationship and they happen to like your spouse, they're going to be against you. They're going to make you feel even worse. They're going to belittle you. They're going to tell you, why are you being like that? He's so great, or she's so great. Don't be like that. You're never going to get someone like this again for, blah, blah, blah. So they're going to make you feel really bad.
Wow.
So not telling them, yeah, about that is really important, I think. And then having them, at an arm's length. And that helps, because you can sort of, I always say this, but zoom out a little bit and see them for like what they do, the mask they put on, the rotating mask they put on, and maybe just not take them as serious as you usually would, which is really, really, really hard and a lot of therapy work. But you need to just put some space in between the two of you. I think this is the most important, and that's hard boundaries and consequence of like never caving in, because they're gonna try to wear you down, like wear your walls down or your shields down all the time,
Mm,
and make you feel
mm.
guilty
That's a great,
and make you feel bad.
yeah, it's a great piece of advice. So let's think about then, if we realize, or if somebody listening to this realizes that they are at the hands of a narcissist, they've either early on, or it's been quite some time. Some people stay in narcissistic abusive relationships for a very long time because of this pull that the narcissist has on us. It's almost like the person becomes a moth to a lamp. That they can't resist going back, or staying there, right? Because the narcissist has manipulated and controlled this individual so much that it's almost like a trauma bonding. Yeah. So
It is.
how can we? Sorry, it is. It is a trauma bonding.
Yeah, it is. It is trauma bonding. It's, I think, to me, I think it is the strongest addiction there is, stronger than heroin, if you ask me, because this person can give you your biggest high in the whole entire world. When things are good with the narcissist, there is nothing better. And then that person can also give you the worst low without truly killing you like heroin would, but inside they do. And this is why, like, you have to be so careful. This is just as dangerous, being with a narcissist, as a massive drug addiction. And I'm not kidding you. And it's just going to wear you down. And you're always, I don't know if, you've ever experienced this, or people around you, your friends, they're always, they're so great in the beginning that your whole entire relationship, you're trying to get back to that beginning, like your first hit of ecstasy or whatever it was. You're never going to get that back. It's never going to be as perfect as it was, but that's what you're running after. And you just then at some point okay with breadcrumbs that they give you, because you're just so desperate to get back to that first stage of happiness with them, and you don't want it to be true that they'll never give that to you again.
Goodness me, that's so powerful to hear that, Alina. So, you have a 10-step approach to this, and again, please go to Alina's Instagram page. It's brilliant. There's everything on there that you are going to need, more than we can compact into this limited time together here on So What's Your Story. But there are certain things, techniques that you can implement to ending and stepping away from a narcissist. One of the most common advisable is, and the listeners are going to be now Googling like crazy, grey rock. Okay. It is where the person who has been affected, literally, you cut the snake's head off. You end everything, but you do it in a non-emotive way. They will hate it. And they will actually, the narcissist will do all in their power to bring you back into their control, because that's what this is. It's a control thing. Alina, can you help us? We're not going to do the 10-step, and it is there. It's online, but you've even forgotten you've done it. But that's how much content you do put out there. But what is, firstly, talk us through grey rock and its principles, if you can, and then also your take on bringing this disruptive, as you've rightly said, damaging association with somebody either with NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, or with strong narcissistic traits, which are not healthy for anybody to be around.
I mean, grey rock's principle is I call it re-stonewalling the narcissist. So narcissist, giving them the feeling that no matter what they do, they don't get any response out of you, right? So it's just being totally unresponsive and passive. Now, that sounds good in theory, and it is a good idea, but what that does is, like, I have a lot of people going, okay, so I'm going to try that, and is that going to get him or her to do what I want them to do, or to act the way I want them to act? And the answer is no. It will not do that. What's going to evoke is frustration in most narcissists, because they can no longer use you and manipulate you and make you, use you like a marionette, getting them to have you do what they want you to do. Gosh, it's complicated. So when you stop responding, I always say irritation causes motivation. So when you stop responding, you disrupt the pattern of usually trying to make them feel better, usually trying to make them, walk on eggshells, usually being really careful around them, not evoking a fight, not stressing them, not, all of these things. So you stop doing all of that and you don't react. So when they offend you, you don't get defensive. When they say something mean, you don't try to fight back. You don't cry. You don't show them anything. So then they're irritated, because that's not your normal behavior. And when someone is irritated, you can also try this with healthy people. They are motivated to get some reaction out of you. So what they do then is they put on their, all of their masks, which, and this is a disclaimer, can be, if they're violent narcissists, if they're aggressive, that can be really dangerous if you grey rock them, because they can get really angry.
Wow.
Do be careful with that.
Thank you for adding that. Thank you.
Yeah, because there's things where I've had clients, locked in rooms, locked in their house, being chased in a car. Like, there's really, really bad situations, because they get really upset that now you're seeing through them. And I think if you're ready to grey rock, that's fantastic, but it is your first step in getting out of this relationship. It's not a method to stay in it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
But because I feel like if that's where you, if that is your go-to for manipulating, for thinking that it's going to cause peace, it's not going to cause peace, because they're not going to be happy with harmony, because that's not what they want. So this is really important to understand. So it is a technique you can use to de-escalate a moment, or to be free for a day, or to slow down a fight, or, things like that, where things go crazy, and in like you basically buy yourself time, but it's not a strategy to live happily ever after with a narcissist. I just want to state that because some people don't know that that's not what that is. Does that make sense? Like, it's just not a strategy.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm going to
Thank
say
you,
this,
Alina. Thank you for giving clarity on that. I really appreciate that.
yeah, and there, because to me there is no strategy in being happy with a narcissist. It just, there is no happy end with a narcissist, and this is my very strong personal and professional opinion, and people can call me out on this, but I've just never seen it.
You know, because there's going to be people listening to this, Alina, that are going to say, oh shit, right? I am right ingrained with a romantic relationship, with a career relationship, with a sibling, with a family member, with a group of, in my circle of friends, that now, having, you know, not just listened to this episode, but having gone and looked upon Alina's online social content, I've done my research. I've always suspected this, but now I'm looking right in the eye of me being a victim. Is there anything that we can suggest, or you can suggest, Alina? Not we, me. I'm just an aggregator on this episode.
I think there's several steps, and I'm actually, and this is, I don't want to do commercial for this, but I'm actually putting together a book now that's going to come out next September, because I want it all in one place, like everything that my experiences with clients, with me, and everything that I know about it, I'm going to put it in one book, and I'm going to bring that out. But that's way too late for someone who is today stuck in a relationship with a narcissist. So what you can do until then, I think the first and most important thing is to understand you are not going crazy, because this is how you're going to feel, and to get yourself some allies, because you cannot do this alone. I don't care how strong you are. You cannot do this alone. You need some allies in your life, even if it's just one person, two people. If it's a therapist, if it's your best friend, if it's your mother, whoever it is. Don't abuse your kids, by the way, for this. If you're in a relationship with a narcissist and you have like 6 to, I don't know, plus children that you want to talk to, do not do that, because it's very, very bad for the kids. But anyone else who is an adult and who can help you, you need to bring into your boat. And be careful here, because narcissists do use flying monkeys. You've mentioned this before, Ian, when we were speaking the first time we talked. To abuse you
Thank you for mentioning that. Tell us about flying monkeys.
I wanted to bring that in because people are like, oh, and then my best friend, but then she just told me like I should. So basically, let's just give an example. I don't know, Sarah and John is a do we want to make Sarah the narcissist so it's not always the boys? There's always the men narcissist.
Yeah, so there's a lot of men who are supposed to be narcissists. So let's make Sarah a narcissist, please. Yeah.
Let's make Sarah one. Okay, so we've got Sarah the narcissist, and John is getting belittled, and he's questioning his worth, and she's constantly putting him down, and she's telling him he's not making enough money, and he's useless as a man, and what the heck, and he can't even bring it in bed, and whatever, all these things. And now John has a very, very good friend since his childhood. Her name is, let's call her Maria. Now, Sarah knows Maria very well. They hang out all the time, and what happens is Sarah will use Maria as a flying monkey by telling Maria that John is always, so sensitive. And I don't know why John is so lazy, just doesn't do anything at work. And it's just, oh my God, it's so frustrating. But I really, I love him so much. So that's why I stick to him, and I'm standing right behind him. And she will manipulate Maria to the point where Maria, who does not know that she's a flying monkey, who does not know that she's being manipulated or being used. And she means well because she loves John because he's her best friend. But she also loves Sarah and John being together because she sees, Sarah is such a great person and she loves him so much. All the stuff she tells me, blah, blah, blah. So anyways, long story short, John now is feeling horrible in this relationship, questioning himself, questioning the relationship, goes to his best friend, Maria, and is like, hey, Maria, I'm always feeling like she's doing this, she's doing that, she blah, 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 tells her his story. And what does Maria do now? She tells him But John, I think that, Sarah really loves you. She's always, supporting you. I think you're just, you're making this too big in your mind. Don't overthink it, da da da. She gives him this kind of advice, which is a loving advice, and it's a mending advice, because she doesn't want them to split up. She wants the best for John. She wants him to stay happy. They just got married, whatever it is. The problem is Sarah has managed to use Maria to farther manipulate John into thinking he's not worthy. Okay. And this is really dangerous. And this happens to the best of us, and the best, parents who mean well, siblings who mean well, friends who mean well. So be very, very careful. And I always say this in my videos too. When you choose someone that you confide in, make sure 100% that this is a person who will only support you in leaving, and not once make you question your agenda if you want to get out of this. Those are the people you need surrounding you.
Wow. That was so powerful, and such a beautiful little, anecdote as well, that, you've sort of created this scenario for us. But, so powerful, Alina. Thank you so much for sharing that. And, they incidentally, people, the Maria, that's called a flying monkey, right? And they can not be just one of them, or they can recruit a whole team, So be very, very, be very, very aware of that. Okay, so let's think now.
Okay, I was saying, so this is like the first thing, most important, not to be alone in this, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because I did a whole story, but basically to the point. Yeah.
Ultimately, you may need professional help. And this is where the next piece is coming in, because invariably victims of, and I've got some friends, some close friends, some family members that have been, victimized and really, really badly affected by being in this close proximity or relationships with either somebody with NPD or a narcissistic abuser. Let's talk about the trauma that it leaves behind, Alina, because, some people may, narcissism, it's a word now that's being very, very much, put in there in the public domain. A lot of people are talking about it. You're a professional, so you've got a deep understanding of this. But this is real, and when people have been abused, it affects them physically, mentally. You even spoke earlier about some people take their own lives, but that's tragic. That's absolutely tragic. And one life is way too many. One life is just way too many But a lot of people are left really, really, men and women, traumatized at a very, very deep level. And it takes a lot to recover, doesn't it? Again, can you, and I'm putting a lot on you today, but, and we only have a short window of time, because these are very, very expansive. These are very expansive questions, but it is real, right? Post-traumatic stress from narcissistic abuse is real. Yeah.
Yes. So I actually wrote my whole PhD on this because it's not only post-traumatic stress. So post-traumatic stress disorder, I'm just going to try to make it really short because it's huge, but it's 200 pages. But basically, post-traumatic stress disorder is something that there's type 1 and type 2 PTSD. Type 1 is if you have a one-off situation, like you've been in a car accident, you got raped, you witnessed your mother getting beaten up by your father, something like that. That's a one-off. I mean, usually that's not a one-off, but you know what I mean, like a one-off circumstance. And then there's type 2, which is reoccurring. So if you've been you're in the military, you're in war, you're reoccurringly getting traumatized, you're seeing your father beat up your mother many times over years, or you are being in a narcissistic relationship or an abusive relationship, violent relationship of any kind, you have reoccurring trauma. So it's not a one-off. And what that leads to is not PTSD in this case, but complex PTSD, which is it's even bigger because it's something that you've relived over and over and over again. And what I wrote in my PhD is the fact that there's this thing called narcissistic victim syndrome, which correlates almost one-to-one with CPTSD, which what the difference is, and this is a huge impact, the difference between regular PTSD, not to diminish that, because that is horrible as is if you've been through something horrible. But the thing that makes it even worse, and so much worse, when you have narcissistic victim syndrome or CPTSD, is the fact that you have put yourself through this and you didn't leave. And the shame and the guilt that that evokes, that you are part of the problem. This is what you're thinking. It is my fault for not leaving him, and therefore I cannot fully blame life or circumstances because I keep going back and I keep going back and I keep going back, which makes you part of the problem, which makes you doubt yourself so much more, makes you feel guilty so much more, makes you feel horrible about yourself, like you will lose all your self-esteem, you will lose your self-efficacy essentially. And that is the biggest problem to me, and because that leaves the biggest scars and it takes the longest to heal, because you don't also other people are like, well, why didn't you just leave him or her? I mean, you could have just left. Nobody's holding a gun to your head. And you internalize that and you're like, this is true and I stayed, so I am the problem.
Wow. Woo. I mean, there's a lot of people listening to this right now that are going, holy shit, that's me. You know, there's that old adage, isn't there, Alina? Time is a great healer. But can you help us also, just because you've really just made a very, very powerful observation. You wrote a PhD on this, so you know you're and we can't answer it. Listeners, please, we can't answer this in this limited time we have together. You know, Alina has clients that come and see her time and time again in one-to-one therapy to just help heal. It takes a lot of time, a lot of self-work as well. It's not just about, the person that's facilitating your healing process. You've got to surround yourself. You've got to develop that self-love again, that confidence, etc., etc. But, Alina, help us with a couple of things that you might suggest.
All right, can I also add, because I always say this is because it's really big on my heart. When you are in this, when you do have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, it can happen that your behaviors to an outsider, and especially to a therapist, if you go seek therapy and you don't tell them this, it can happen that the therapist thinks that you have borderline disorder, because the traits that then happen, like the insecurity, the feelings of chronic emptiness, the ups and downs in your moods, and all of these things together, and the fragility of the, self-worth, and all of these things can seem like you're borderline. So they will misdiagnose you and they will treat you in a very different way than when you tell them you have complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So please, I just really want to, everybody who's listening and who feels like, oh my gosh, this is me, when you go seek help, you need to tell them what you've been through. Otherwise, the therapist might misinterpret this and might put you in a box, which again is devastating for your self-worth, because that is not who you are. That's just where you're at right now and how you feel, and those symptoms just overlap. So if you're going through CPTSD, you do not have borderline personality disorder. That's just two separate things. It's going to be a phase, and you're going to get out of it if you work on that. So that's the difference. Okay, really important to note, so nobody misdiagnoses you.
I think adding that piece in there, Alina, is so important, because again, yeah, it's just critical, isn't it? Because you don't want to be doubly whammed, when you're seeking help, and then they're seeing something else and they're not understanding. Because look, when you go and see a therapist, everybody listening to this, and I go and see a therapist, right? And, on other things, I have done for a long time, and it's helped me to grow to be the whole person that I am. But when you first go and see a therapist, they don't know. It comes down to communication. They're not mind readers. So if you're not telling the therapist, and some men really struggle with this, because I don't wish to sweep a brush, but a lot of men do struggle with communication. So it's very, very important to be fair to the therapist, that you tell everything very, very early on, because the therapist is obviously using professional methodology to understand what's going on. But if we don't tell them, then they've got no chance really, or they will, but over time maybe. Yeah, thanks for that, Alina. So the question was really covered within that answer, really. I'm conscious that we've had a lot of time together in studio today already, and there is so much content and expertise that you offer on this subject. I've mentioned it throughout this episode, but I am going to keep steering people back to your social media and, of course, to your website. You do take private clients, and I know you've got a full diary, but you do help people, and your online content is really, really very, very helpful. Let me start to bring this episode to a close. So I've got a couple of questions that I really, really want to ask you as we start to come towards the end of today's session. And one of those is, how do you manage your work-life balance, and how do you unwind and relax, Alina?
Yeah, I personally am all about connecting to animals in nature. That's how I unwind. So I live in the outskirts of Vienna as well, where I'm just looking right now into the green. So trees, forest. I have like a 2-minute walk into the forest, and you'll usually catch me like riding my horse or taking a walk with Amari. So that's how I unwind the best. But if I can't do that, or the weather doesn't permit it, or I'm not home or something like that, I think what really helps me is apps that help meditate. So I'm obsessed with Insight Timer, shout out, and Calm, shout out, and what else? Like, yeah, I used to do Headspace, but right now I'm obsessed with Insight Timer and Calm. I think they're two fantastic apps that give you breath work or meditation or all of those practices. And that's kind of, or also take hot baths. I love baths. So that's kind of like how I come down. Work-life balance. Yeah. So if you ask me practice and home, yes, I've got that sorted, but I am always doing the next project. And as we spoke about, like now I wrote the book, or I'm going to write the book. I have not written it yet. Oh my God, stresses me out. But what I did write, and what I also actually want to mention here, just because it's so relevant and it has helped me in the past massively, is I just created a toxic breakup journal. And it's going to be out next week on Amazon. And that is such a cool tool for if you have already left, or if you are about to leave, you order it. And it leads you through 35 days where I accompany you on your breakup. And I think that that's something so helpful. I've seen there's a lot of breakup journals, and I've ordered like all of them to do my research. And I've used one before, which was very, very helpful. But the one that I have now is geared towards abusive, toxic relationships. So it's very different, and it asks different questions. And I just think that that's huge help. So that was my next project. So going back to work-life balance, I always have like some next thing in my head where I can help people or try to help people more. And I'm never really not working, if you know what I mean. I think you're similar. We had a little chat, and I know that you are like that too.
We do, yeah. It's funny because I have Duke, my beautiful 2.5-year-old Weimaraner, and Alina and I exchange photographs of our dogs. But any dog lover listening to this will understand that. And Amari, Alina's dog, is stunning, absolutely stunning. And you're right, Alina. I take time out. I similarly, it's funny, but for me, it's nature, it's relaxation, it's meditation, it's yoga, it's sound baths, it's cold water, it's breath work. Not all at once, I hasten to add, but all of those things. But when I'm coming into those relaxed states of mind, and Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this quite extensively. When we're in the eye of the storm of a problem, it's very, very difficult to see a solution. And it's the same in our business acumen. When we're looking for the next thing, if we're in the eye of, oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do it, the creativity doesn't flow, the ideas don't flow. Yeah. So when we're relaxed and when we're walking the dog, or you're, in your case, riding the horse or doing some meditation, or when you come out of that, you've actually altered the brain waves. You have altered them. That they've gone from I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but we study Joe Dispenza, right? That's the easiest thing. But and others, there are other people who are very, very good in this field. But really, it just enables us to just be relaxed. So we've got a slight, listeners. We have, Alina and I are managing this really well, but we have got a slight satellite delay, even though she's only in Austria. I don't know whether it's part of the platform that we're using, but usually it's very, very good. But anyway, so yes, in answer to your question, Alina, your point, you and I are very, very similar, but I also have to take time out, and otherwise I would just go a million miles an hour all day long. Reminders then, this journal guide thing that's out there that you can get on Amazon. What's it called? What's the title?
It's called, I actually have it here. It's just the cover is not finished, okay, because it's the wrong color. It's going to be in red. But it's called My Toxic Breakup, a Guided Journal. And as you see, this is just my proof.
Okay.
And I'm going to have it in red, but I don't like this red. Do you like this red, Ian? I think it's too dark. I want a brighter red. So I'm ordering. So we ordered another one for proof, and then it should be out next week on Amazon. I'll give you a shout out and the link, but it's just called My Toxic Breakup, a Guided Journal. And you'll find it. Like, I'll put it on my Insta and TikTok and stuff as soon as it's out. But this is really just, it saved me last time I broke up a relationship, or I got broken up with, let's put it that way.
Kind of answered a question, which is what's next, because you've got lots of projects, lots of exciting things. There's a book coming out next year. This journal's come out now. Your following's growing, personal appearances, but everything's going on. And I'm going to, if listeners don't already know how to find you, I can steer that on when this episode goes out. All the links to everything Alina's got going on will be on all of my pages. So please, have a look there. But I want to leave this question in your very, very capable hands as a wrap to this episode. So I'm going to say thank you now for coming on to So What's Your Story, sharing some amazing insights and just being a beautiful human being, right? That's the first thing. But let me leave you with this. What should we do if we have a bad gut feeling about somebody we're dating early on in the relationship?
Oh, what a mean question. This is so hard. Okay. So do you want the therapist answer, or do you want Alina answer? I'm joking. No,
you shoot wherever you want to
go. No, honestly, guys, I think that if you ask me, I know that in the beginning, if you get this like gut feeling going, oof, I'm not sure if, I don't know, I see the red flags, but they're so awesome though. I see the red flags, but they're so fun, like that kind of, you don't know where you're at. I think the most important part is to really, 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 really slow things down, okay? And really look at this person, because I understand that this whole like ethereal, like instinctive, like you can't put your hand on it feeling that you have when you're falling for someone, right, is so strong. And I would be not human if I would be like, oh, and you just turn that off and just walk the other way, because you're probably not gonna do that, right? Because it's just like this pull. But I need you to really, really, really just, as much time as you can take, try to slow things down. And if you slowing things down, which means like not seeing them every day, not doing everything with them, not letting them control you right away, not, like those kinds of things, saying no once. Try those things. And if they react harshly, you've got yourself a narcissist here, okay? And if they react that way, it would be better if you would walk away. I understand if you don't. I'm not judging you if you don't. I know how hard it is. Just make sure you tell someone right from the get-go, maybe your best friend or something, that you think that you have yourself a little narcissist, a little covert narcissist here, but the drag is too strong. But you have your eyes open, even if you have your pink glasses on. I think this is the most, you know, real world advice that you can actually apply, because walking away is asking a lot. If you can walk away, walk away.
Yeah, that's tremendous advice, and I'm not going to add anything to that. Alina, Dr. Alina Kastner, by your formal title, thank you so much for joining me today on So Watch Your Story. It's been insightful, educational, painful to listen to at times. I'm sure my friends and network that have been subjected to a narcissist, or maybe even some listeners, that I don't know. Obviously, I don't know you all, because you're all 52 countries around the world listening to this, going, "Oh my God, I needed to hear this today." Well, if that was the case, I can just say to you, go and search Alina Kastner on Instagram. Remind me, Alina, what's your handle? What's your
It's like on Instagram and on TikTok, it's just Dr. Alina Kastner, all in one, all lower caps.
I've enjoyed my time with you. I hope you have too. And I hope that we can meet together one day and have a coffee. And yeah.
Very much so. Thank you really, really, really for having me. I really enjoyed it. And I really hope that we can, open some people's eyes and get them to get themselves some help and not be alone in this. So thank you for having me on your podcast. It was an honor. And you know what? One day we're going to walk our 2 dogs together. We need to get that happening, even though it's hard to get into the UK with a dog. But we should do that in the forest and make another great plan for future projects. Let's do that. Thank you so much.
I like that. I like that. Oh, you're amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alina. See you soon.
Take care. Bye.